Greetings and welcome to Meet a CHM Family Member. My name is Cory MacDonald. I am the Engagement Director for the Choroideremia Research Foundation. In this series, we have spoken to CHMers. We've spoken to carrier moms. This is going to be our first chat with the father of a couple of affected CHMers. So like to welcome my dear friend. This is one of my favorites, Tom Driscoll. How are you today, Tom?
Cory, very good to see you. And, yes, one of my dear friends, the first person I really ever met in the business.
Yeah, I showed up at your work unannounced.
I know.
Remember that?
Yeah. Mr. Driscoll, there's a guy out there to see you. I don't think he can see. So, gotta be him. I just talked to him a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that was fun. Anyway, so you are from Eastern Mass, Swampscott. So
Swampscott, Massachusetts.
Yeah, just a couple hours away from me.
11 miles north of Boston on the water.
Yeah, and you have you have a fun job, which is magistrate and clerk of courts. Yeah. And you also I know that you are very heavy into lacrosse.
Yeah, that's kind of a passion. A passion that I think which is a story that I'm sure I'll get into about passing that passion on to my sons and my daughter, who have all played.
I didn't know she played too. Really? That's awesome.
Oh yeah, 4 years ago I had to switch over to start coaching girls lacrosse, which was a totally different game.
Yeah.
Really, other than the ball and the net, it's almost a completely different game.
Really?
Different sticks, different rules. So yeah. I had to learn those quite fast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you personally like to get out on the golf course, and if you
very badly. I get out there. I've been playing golf longer than anyone I know that could be as bad as I
am. You've never played with me.
Well, you'd be amazed.
I was one of my brothers is he plays professionally. I've actually caddied for him at US Open qualifiers and things like that over the years. And I was starting to play a little bit. One of my friends was getting into it, and he said, he asked me, he says, hey, because my brother was coming up for a tournament, and he said, could he give me some tips? And I asked my brother, he's like, sure. He goes, I have to go to the range anyway, so we made an appointment. We met up at the range, and my buddy hit some balls, and my brother helped him with his swing and stuff and his stance. And then he says to me, he says, why don't you hit a couple? And I said, okay, like, what am I doing, right? So I stand up there, put the ball on the tee, and I swung the club, and I felt the club hit the ball, and I'm looking out for, where did the ball go? Right. And I hear this laughter behind me. I look over, my brother had fallen over on his side, holding his stomach, laughing. And come to find out, when I hit the ball, it went in between my legs into the bush behind me.
The interesting thing is that we'll talk, I'm sure, about the boys, but they both golf.
I'm not kidding.
And I golf with them. Obviously their friends know, and I know. So if you're golfing with them, you have to probably, like, Thomas golfs more than Robert, but you have to kind of stand behind them, which you probably would not stand behind your friend who's golfing.
Nope.
And then keep an eye on it for them, and to see, because what they do is, obviously with their peripheral going, it's more when they get their good center of vision going, the backdrop of the sky and the ball, it's very hard for them to pick up. But I mean, Thomas can hit it a country mile. Robert's pretty good too. So
nice.
I mean, sadly, I don't know how much longer they can go, although, I've encouraged Thomas to actually, there is, sight impaired golfing. I mean, there is, as long as he's retaining some of his sight and have, someone work with him.
I
I
mean,
mean, I think he gets nervous about that it would be me that worked with him.
yeah, many years ago, we're talking like early 80s, Freddie, or mid 80s, I think it was, but Freddie Couples, uh, who was a PGA player at the time, he was the spokesman for celebrity spokesperson for the Foundation Fighting Blindness.
Yeah,
And he played in a tournament, a charity tournament, and was beaten by a guy who was fully blind.
really.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yep. So it's not like it's impossible. So,
No, I mean, listen, I don't, I know there's one young man in our group now that's playing college football, but
mhm.
both Thomas and Robert played NCAA Division III lacrosse at a pretty high level, two of the best Division III leagues in the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they adapted. I mean, at a certain point, and Robert still coaches now, and so does Thomas, and I could see it from the stands, but their teammates all knew. The Thomas and Robert are very open about their condition, and you could see in a night game, you could see certain long passes to them that they just adapted, and they were both very defensive oriented players. I mean, they kind of play what they call defensive midfield and then defense, and
Mm-hmm.
which really, I think, as they got older, that really was what they're best suited for. But you could see them moving along defensively, probably have to turn their head more than the other players to see what was coming. But they were good. I mean, they really were good. And so I think that
Well, let's
it's
actually
things
let's back up a little bit and get into. So now, when did you first hear about choroideremia? Like, hear that word?
I probably should have Tara here, because as she'll tell you, I have absolutely no memory of anything. But I'm guessing the boys were, probably 10 and 7, maybe. I think.
I know you came to your first conference. That was 2008 in Baltimore, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So it had to be
So
right around.
so Thomas must have been, so that was, but that was, we had told them before that. Well, we had learned about it. They didn't know about it. So I think we went a few years there without them knowing about it,
Mhm.
which we had made it was a devastating moment in our lives, because we were completely, utterly blindsided. Tara and she has 2 sisters, and they were not, she was the only carriers that come to find out. But we found out when Robert went, the youngest one, the younger boy. And I think he had astigmatism then the doctor, really top notch, ophthalmologist, looked at it and said to Tara, I need to see your other son, the older one. And he came in, and as Tara says, I wasn't there. She said she sensed that his knees buckled, because he's like saw it in both. And he's like, I think we got to get them in again to the world famous Dr. Burson, who had the charm of this table. And we brought him in, and we not confronted. I guess I was probably more confrontational, because I was not very happy. Not that anyone would be, but that there was this oops kind of attitude about it, and it was devastating. And as and I know he's gone, he's not with us anymore, but Dr. Burson basically, maybe because there wasn't really anything you could say, was, they're going to go blind, wear sunglasses, try to treat them as normal as you can, but there's nothing we can do. I think I'm surmising that's pretty much what he said. And then walking out of there was tough. But we waited. And this is what I need Tara. I just can't remember if we did that after we took. No, we didn't fully tell them at that point. They had the test. We had a problem with we didn't want to have Thomas, the oldest, keep a secret from his brother. So we wanted Robert to get old enough where he could rationally, have a better understanding of it. So we probably waited a few years, and then we sat him down. We sent, for people out there who don't know, we also have a, out of the blue, 10 years after Robert was born, we have our little daughter, Carolyn. So there's a big gap in our family. One of the cousins will come take Callie, and we told the boys we need to sit down and talk to him. And as they will tell you, they were like, when we told them, they were like, oh, we thought you were getting divorced. But, it was really interesting because it was it was horrible, right? And they both looked at us and like, oh, yeah. And I guess that's why we can't see stars. I was like, I'd kind of heard this story before, but that was like when that's why I can't see well. And they understood it. And then I think you and I talked, even at that young age, we're like, oh, listen, we don't have to tell anybody. Okay, this is your call. But we want to start raising some money. We want to be active. We want to try to find a treatment here. And I said, I'll do it. I said, but it does become harder for us to address the reality of what we're doing and why we're doing it, to all of a sudden see Tom Driscoll and Tara Driscoll took up the cause of choroideremia out of the blue.
Yeah.
Be more of an impact if we could say that you guys had, and they were like, no, do it. Even at that age, they're like, no, whatever it takes, and I think knowing both of them, they don't hide behind us. They don't, Robert's spoken on panels, and Thomas. So I think that they get it. So it's kind of our story, but we haven't really treated them differently. We're more, obviously you're more cautious. And I do think sometimes they get a little perturbed at us because we do get a little, we're concerned. And I think, parents are always concerned about their kids.
Yeah.
Through teenage years, through their roaring 20s. But you're always like, you sure you want to do this? You want to do that? They both drive fine, but they don't pretty much. Robert, I think Thomas's vision's worse than Robert's, and I think that he doesn't drive as much at night. Robert is still pretty good, but he's still careful. They would never go out on the highway at night. They would never, they're very careful. But I think that during the day that I drive with them all the time. I mean, it's not to this point an issue, but I think they realize that is going to be an issue. But as you deal with these things.
Yeah, you would adjust.
But we never, and I say to these people, I mean, that my kids played lacrosse and football, and wanted to keep playing, and did. And so I always wonder. I mean, like I said, I don't remember the kid's name that's playing football at out in West Virginia there currently. I think that's been a great story for young kids, to see what Thomas and this kid do. I mean, you can't pack it in, and you're a champion of that. You just can't, and you can't let them pack it in. You can't dwell on it. You stay focused, you be careful, but you got to let them live what they want to do. Now, if you don't think I'm on pins and needles when they're out at a bar, but but they're friends. They have really great friends. So I mean, that's one thing I always encourage those who have choroideremia or anything like that, is to really educate their friends as best they can, because it becomes a great tool. They have someone watching their back.
Yeah, I was very lucky growing up, teenage years and through my 20s and stuff, that like one of my buddies, when we would go out to the clubs, he always wore a light colored shirt, and he did it on purpose so that I could find him easier in the darkened environment, little things like that. And one of my best friends, when we were like 13, I think, when we met, and we were out and about in the neighborhood one night, and I talked about the fact I don't see well at night, and I may have to, take your arm or grab your shoulder or something, in dark areas. And he said, sure, no problem. And that first time he walked me into a tree because he wanted to see if I was telling the truth or not.
Well,
and then after that, he was fine. He was a great guide at night.
the people watching this may not know Art Man that well, but Eric Hartman, he will tell you the story. I got him lost. We got lost in Europe because I wasn't reading the signs. I left him off in front of the wrong hotel room at one of our conferences. So it's like a running joke that I guess I'm not that much of a help, but
I think back, it was, well, you've met at previous conferences, my friends Kat and Tyrone.
Yeah.
And well, they came to their first conference in 04 in New Orleans. And Tyrone was trying to be nice, and he'd never done sighted guide before. And he was trying to help a CHMer and walked him right into a pole.
I find it's interesting. I'll be walking out and about somewhere, and I'll see someone sight impaired and like just going about their business, usually crossing a street or something. And I'll stop them and I'll say, would you like it? I don't say to them, I said, do you want help? I tell them, would you like me to guide? And they know immediately that I understand,
Yeah.
And I remember you and Eric first teach me, like, guiding me doesn't mean dragging me. But I mean, that's a real, it's
a skill, just like anything else. You'll learn how to do
it's a reality. It's sad. I mean, you talk about the conferences, their first conference. I mean, they're not your parent. That today, and I'm sure Tara would agree, it's probably the saddest day of our lives. Meeting you guys, nothing personal. It wasn't that we don't love you, but when you walk into a room when you've just been told your kids are losing their eyesight, and all you see is people with walking sticks and this and walking around and guide dogs, and it was tough. We cried the whole weekend. We literally just sat there, we sat in the back because we couldn't talk to them. We kept crying, and which we were like, this isn't really good for people to see, because obviously it was really interesting because we learned pretty quickly that most, I'm not saying all, eventually it sadly have some vision. It's like, so there's not, and so, well, boy, that was tough. But we rallied. It helped us. And from that point on, it kind of, people like Beth and some other parents got, a hold of us. So I think that's funny, because I think sometimes now we go to these conferences and we feel like we've been around. I mean, although, I will say that that first conference, I left with a lot more hope, and we can talk about that stuff later, but you guys, and I'm not blaming you, but everyone telling me that my sons, things were going to be great, and my sons won't have to deal with this. My sons won't have to deal with this. It's been a long time. And I think that's been one of my frustrations that I'm talking about, that we're not.
Although, when you think about it from the perspective of, we'd only been around for 8 years when you came to your first conference.
Yeah.
And
well, Jean Bennett was there, though. That was the whole, I think she was the first time she was at it. And so there was this, was it the mouse model? They actually got it to live.
No, that was Miguel was there. Miguel Ciabra was in Baltimore. Dr. Bennett came to Seattle 2010, 2 years later.
We didn't go to Seattle. That's the one we missed.
And you were talking about getting involved, and I remember, like, one of the first things you did, and this is before, I believe it was before you told the boys, was that you came out to San Francisco with Eric and I to help out at the American Academy of Ophthalmology.
That was really pretty soon after Baltimore.
Yeah, it was that fall, I believe.
Yeah, and I got up and went out, and I learned a lot there. It was great to be with you guys, because that really kind of didn't change my perspective, but it exposed me to, I saw you guys at the conference, but I didn't really kind of live with you for a few days kind of learn and learn a lot of you guys.
And it was also, I think, it was I remember when we were talking about, because we could have 3 people and we were talking about who would be a third. And I remembered from the conversation we had when I walked into your work that day, that, you wanted to get involved, you wanted to push things, but at that point, you really couldn't be openly public about it.
Yeah, because we hadn't told the kids.
Exactly. And so my thinking was, well, here's this guy that wants to be involved. And here's a way for him to be involved. Let me give him a call and see if he'd like to go. Because it was a way for you to help us with getting exposure for the foundation, and helping us get the word out about what we're doing or trying to do. And so I think it worked out really well.
We don't have to tell them the story that when ophthalmologists weren't paying attention to us, I would chase them down and scream at them. I needed to adjust myself a little bit. I was a little hot, as I say. I was coming in hot.
And I have no problem with that, and it was funny. I think back now that, like you said, coming in hot in 2008, and that was also Randy's first conference was 2008.
Yeah.
So talk about, a couple of people who ended up becoming pillars with our organization. That was their first. Randy
was a pillar. I'm just down around the carpet somewhere, but the people should know, and we're just BSing here, but remember you had Randy get a hold of me because you thought Randy and I should communicate. Randy, I'd be a good person. Yeah. Randy. And for you out there who don't know him, Randy was from Tennessee. And his accent was as Tennessee as mine is Boston. And we had a conversation, and
I wish we'd recorded it.
I hung up the phone and called you and said, I don't think I understood anything he was saying. And he's like, well, I don't think he understood you either. I said, well, that's a
yeah, I wish we could have recorded that conversation.
Oh, my dear Lord, it was painful, but I can't, like I said. And Tara pointed that out to me, is like, don't you think it was pretty painful for him too? I'm like, oh, why would that be?
So now you have watched your boys now from obviously early age up to, where they are now in their 20s. Mm-hmm. And so what ways have you helped them with adjusting or helped to guide them or inform them?
Well, like I kind of indicated, we try to guide them. Mm-hmm. Because I think, and obviously I don't have choroideremia, right? So, and neither does Tara. She carries all those other issues in terms of a mother and guilt, and we all have guilt. Even though it's always kind of placed on the mother, I do think there's some carryover to the father, even though I wasn't a carrier, but that's always a fine line. People have to realize you want to guide, you want to educate, you want to watch out for them, but they're going to be resistant. They don't want to be, at least my sons, Callie still has to tell us now, like, don't you think they don't want to hear about, they don't want to hear how nervous you are, don't want to be always told to be careful. And, and I told Callie when she said that to me, I'm like, okay, I'll try not to be, but I worry about you, and you're not sight impaired, right? You don't have choroideremia. I'm a parent, so parents.
I'm coming up on 10 years since my mom passed away. Yeah. So I was 48 when she passed away, and up until the last time I spoke to her, her last words to me were, "Be careful."
Yeah, and I think that and if you really put the boys down, sit them down. There was one time that I know we're tough as parents, by the way. We're not tough. It'd be hard for you to tell, like, in general, but like it's behavior we're tough on. Like, we don't, knock on wood. I've got 3 kids now. They've never been in trouble. They know in my business, and I deal with the police all the time, and I deal with the court system, I see bad lives all the time. And And I'm an elected official, so I've kind of always, and unfairly or not fairly or unfairly, it's like, listen, you can't get in trouble, all right? Because they're gonna, it's gonna be my kid, and we don't need that. Here's what they do. Here's examples. I've always hit him with examples of things gone astray. So they're very good kids, so I don't worry about that. Maybe some parents have to worry about that more, but with us, it's like I said, it's is it going to be dark? What are you going to do? Ba, 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 ba. But we've done, that's our way of, I think in a way, is supporting them. We support them in terms of letting them be. Thomas they both wanted to get away. We also sent them to boarding school in high school, which, as Tara and I always talk about how, we'd have a lot more money if we didn't do some of these things, but we kind of made a commitment to them through ourselves that to maximize their education while they still had good sight, because I think they're going to need, we always felt like they're going to need to rely on it more. Not that everyone doesn't rely on their education, but it would be harder for them to at age 40 decide to go back and get the degree. Okay, that type of thing. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so we let them at boarding school. And then they both want to go to college, obviously. And instead of going locally, which I wish they had because I could have seen more of their games, one went to college down in North Carolina and the other in Ohio. So they're pretty, but we don't hold them back. I guess we could have been, you can't go to school too far away. We've supported them. We want them to do everything they can. Robert Thomas backpacked through South America. Robert's been to Guatemala a few times, building houses, went to semester abroad in Argentina. So, you're nervous. You don't think we weren't thinking about, talk about going out to nightclubs in Boston. I'm nervous about having them in Buenos Aires, not, living with some host family. We thought about it a lot, but you can't stand in their way. And so they know we're here. We'll do anything for them. So that's kind of how we support them. We've also, I think we really supported them to be public about this. It's their own personal decision. They don't have to do it if they don't want to, but by providing them the resources of just you guys, having them be able to contact you, having them go to conferences, having them, wear the Choroideremia logo with pride, as Robert has it tattooed on his shoulder and is still a little mad at Thomas and I. I'm not saying we won't do it, but the plan was we're all going to do it. And Robert did it. And I don't know, Thomas, I don't think is just into tattoos. And I haven't, at 62, I don't care. I might as well get one at some point.
Maybe I should just get one right on my bald spot. On the
bald spot. I think we provide you to them. My kids, I think, find it beneficial to have people know they have it. I'm speaking out of school here because I don't know. As a parent, I always wonder, like, when do they tell their girlfriends? Both have girlfriends now. So
yeah,
Robert's had more than Thomas in terms of, I think, more long-term, but Thomas had a long-term in college. And I never asked them. We never, and that's like kind of funny. You have to like assume that they
that they're saying something.
Well, yeah, but but we as parents, I worry about, what if, I don't know. And it sounds like it's sad. I don't mean to be this way, but if I'm saying I didn't know anything about choroideremia, that I didn't have kids with it. If my daughter came home and I met her boyfriend, who she's thinking about married to, who's losing his vision, and I look up choroideremia, that's what he has, and I'm like, okay, and love the guy, great guy, but I think as a parent, you go, what's her future? She's going to be, her future with her husband is going to be different than other people's. There's going to be a little more reliance, a little more this or that. So I'm always nervous, and as a proud father, I'd hate to have anybody God forbid any parent ever said that, about my
Well,
son.
here's the way I see it now. I never hid the fact that I had that. If I started, in a relationship or something, I didn't hide the fact. And the way I view it, it takes a very special person to have a spouse with any type of an issue, not just choroideremia. You gotta have that next level person that's going to be able to handle that. And I consider myself very lucky that I found one of those. And so really, to me, it's a good thing if they're right up front about it, because you weed out the chaff quicker.
Oh, I know that, and I assume they are, because it's pretty obvious if you went out to a dimly lit restaurant on your first date. I don't know. That's really something that only they can say. I'm just saying, as a parent, my concern isn't whether they're going to tell her. I know that my concern is, I've been married for 31 years, right? I know what marriage is all about. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad. That, okay, everything's great now, but do you really in this case, the females, do they understand what it's going to be in 20 years? Now, hopefully we'll have some treatment where they'll still have pretty functional sight to make it, that they will be able to do more. But it's something that I, as a parent of a son with choroideremia, it's always in my mind. It's always like, yeah, aren't they nice? And they are. The girls, obviously, they're dating now, lovely, and the ones they have dated are lovely. And but it's not my place. But again, this is about being a parent, right? And
yeah,
things that I think about. None of my friends, not one of my friends, has to think about this. Like when they're thinking about, oh, he's going out with this lovely woman, but they're going to get married, which I will do too. But I'm always going to be going, okay, how's it going to go? I just have that other element. Tara and I probably both do. And I hope whoever watches this knows when I say I really do mean Tara and I.
Yeah.
Unified in all this stuff.
It's fully understandable. Now, you also have done several fundraisers for this.
I don't feel guilty because we haven't done one lately. We got to get around.
Oh, I'm waiting for Matt. We were just talking about you the other day.
What?
We had the conference committee chat, and we were
I volunteered for that. You didn't put me on it, but that's all right.
Hey, you got to talk to Kathy for that. But anyway, it was brought up something about, having some kind of a demonstration about setting up a fundraising page and stuff like that, and how easy it is. And I was sitting there going, oh, heck, we can tap Tom. I said, Tom has this habit now, because our conferences are always right around his birthday, of doing a birthday appeal during the conference. Because like Kathy had mentioned that, potentially doing something like doing a fundraiser at the conference and having a little contest, see who could raise the most money over the course of the conference. And I said, well, Tom's going to win that. So.
No, I think, it's, like every dollar counts, right? So
it does. Absolutely.
If you raise $2 today, that's two we didn't have yesterday, right? It sounds trivial. So yeah, on my birthdays, I tend to just get on Facebook basically and blast it out. And
now with Facebook having, you can do the actual appeal right through Facebook now.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting. I kind of weird. I did find that, like, I'm not saying people are bad, but I do sense that the problem with Facebook with doing that is twofold. When I don't make as much from one year to the other on that, I start to say, they can't possibly be sick of this. But the other thing with Facebook is remember we figured out early on, you got to keep posting it, because it's not going to stay fresh. You sit there and you go, I can't believe that SOB didn't donate. I'm serious. I mean, you'll sit there and go, are you kidding me? He didn't donate. She didn't donate. Well, and Tara made a point. Not everyone gets on Facebook like you do. They may have not looked at it. When they looked at it, it might not have come up so there's a lot of technicalities which could lead to that.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that
I posted every year. What?
Yeah, there's people like I'm in contact with on Facebook that I never see their posts. Never. But yet they're there. They'll react or like or comment on something that I posted. I'm like, oh, I haven't heard from that person in a while,
Yeah. So so you can do that is something we did. I mean, Tara did that race when she ran blindfolded. And then of course we had that one shot. We probably should have done it more, was with that lacrosse thing. We made some money on that.
That was cool. That lacrosse day was fun. And it was fun for me to go there.
Yeah.
And because I had literally never seen a lacrosse game.
Yeah.
Until that day.
To get a high school, 2 high schools to agree to do it. And then actually, wasn't it?
No, you had 4.
Yeah, I had 4 high schools, 2 games, and then followed by a college game.
Yep.
Yeah, that was good. But it's one of those things that I'll tell anyone out there that's doing fundraising. I mean and I've got to get better. Is you got to be consistent. Like you do with your dining in the dark, and with like Oster does with Oktoberfest, and there are others, is to get into some type of, my big thing for us though, I think that, I want to talk to Kathy about it, and I think our board needs to expand. We need to stop talking about raising thousands. We need to start really we need to get taken to the next level and start doing some bigger fundraising, really hitting some bigger people.
Yeah,
there's people in foundations out there that we're just not.
I'm still waiting.
Not hearing about us, and we're not
waiting to hear from a multimillionaire that has been diagnosed with CHM.
Really
has lots of connections, or a really famous person, or
something. You haven't,
like
or you're waiting for that?
I'm waiting for one. I'm waiting. It's got to happen eventually.
Yeah. I can't imagine, what does Wynn give to the Federation? But he has what? RP?
Yeah.
He must give, I'm assuming, gives a lot to money to.
Yeah, he's on there. I don't know how much, but yeah, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not a check for $5,000. I mean, thank you for the $5,000. Don't get me wrong. I would, I send out receipt letters if somebody donates $1.
Yeah, there'd be nothing better for us to be able to wake up one day and have a $2 million check come in. It would change how we go about things in fundraising, which would, it's just like rich people and rich people, money begets money. So that if you started to have that kind of fundraising capabilities, it would only make it,
yeah. Because me, I just have to rely on my good looks and personality, and that doesn't, get me too
exactly.
So, a question that I always had in my mind, and I've never openly asked it before, but I want to throw it at you anyway. But from the perspective of a dad, you have your son or sons in your case, and it's one of those, you have your sons, you're looking forward to the time when they can get older, you can sick them on the girls, that kind of thing. And you have in your head, a view of what your sons can be. Now, how did that change? Or did it change when they got diagnosed?
Well, yeah, they were pretty young, so I probably figured they weren't going to be pro athletes. But I knew they were pretty good athletes. They weren't, so I didn't, that kind of, oh, my kid's going to be a big league ball player type thing. How did it, yeah, you have to adjust. You're not going to say, they weren't into this. What if you had a little kid who just wanted to be a pilot in the worst way? It's all he wanted to do. If they're obsessed with flying and pilots, that would be a tough thing to tell the kid, but
yeah,
you have to, I did it change? I don't know whether it changed. It started to at the beginning, like I think when I first found out, I was like, wow, you know, and you started, what can they, you know, you get more nervous. I mean, but I think you adapt. And I think by you adapting rationally, you kind of create them the ability to adapt. One thing we did do, I mean, and they both, I think, look back at it as something they really appreciate that we did. We really pushed the language on them, so that, you know, they both are fluent in Spanish. Because in the back of my mind, they haven't bought into this yet. But I keep, you know, Thomas was all mad at us because we made him be a double major. He wanted to give it up and just use a minor, and we're like, you know, because he's like, well, his thing is, if you think I don't like poetry in English, imagine what it was like in Spanish, Dad. I'm like, oh, hey, I get it. But Robert, because of Thomas, told him he shouldn't be a major. He has a minor, but I think Robert speaks it better because he spent more time abroad. But either way, they both can speak Spanish fluently. And we just, in our minds, I think we realized that they have to have a strength through their mouth more than probably another child. They need to bring something to the table orally versus visually. You know, they're not going to be electricians, most likely. They could. I mean, but you're gonna have to be, you know, and you know, I mean, you know better than anybody. You don't know how fast this is going to progress. You just don't know. I go to the conference and I see kids younger than them with worse vision. I see people older than them with, you know, better vision. So
well, I think like when we first met, I think one of the things I brought up to you was, you know, the fact that, you know, I know CHMers that were using a cane full time at 14. And I know other ones that, you know, in their 70s were reading the morning newspaper.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah. And then like when we went to that, I think it was Colorado. Right, we were in Denver for the conference. The infamous when they stole our computer conference.
Yeah.
Our room got robbed. But
I remember that.
We're out. I think it was in Denver. We were at like we just snuck out to grab something to eat or something, a coffee shop. And this guy was in there, and you know, just a guy, and over there, and he's talking about it, and then he said, "We down here with the conference." Like, oh yeah, you know, absolutely thought it was a parent, right? Didn't. He goes, oh no, I Choroideremia. We're like, oh, okay, and he's in his 50s. He goes, yeah, you know, I've been lucky. I just stopped driving last year. You know, kind of figured, I think I could have kept doing it, but I just thought it was best not to. And you wouldn't, I couldn't even, honest to God, really, in my whole interaction with him, seeing him get up and move, but I wouldn't have noticed. So, I mean, the range is, unfortunately, the range is, you know, I wish everyone had that range.
Yeah.
You know, it would be a lot easier disease if they said, oh, you know, eventually in your 50s, your eyesight's going to get to the point you're going to make some adjustment. You know, that would be nice if that was the way it was, you know.
Unfortunately.
You know, then we've often wondered, like, is there any connection between families? So if one person in the family, it doesn't progress as fast, does that mean other people in that bloodline won't? I mean, we've often thought about that in terms of our situation. But no, so what you do is, I don't know how I think it adjusts, but it has to adjust. I think the initial adjustment is you panic and that you think they can't do anything. And then you kind of adjust to they can do a lot of things. And then if you can tweak it a little bit, maybe use some parental insight to think, hey, being bilingual for some reason in our mind would be good. Getting their degrees would be good. You know, telling them, you know, because they develop their own, and you know this, but you know, that wanted to be a pilot thing, that's as a little kid. Well, Thomas and Robert and kids, they adjust their understanding of what their goals can be. You know, and again, he's not going to say, you know, I mean, you know, I remember once Robert saying Robert thinks he would have been good in the military, which is ironic because he's like a social justice warrior activist now, but whatever. But then he at one point said, boy, I'd like to help veterans because I can't be in the service. You know, like that's part of, at some point, hasn't really developed yet, but I'm sure he will. So that, you know, he kind of adjusted that, you know, I think he probably wanted to be in the military at one point when he was little, but he kept it in his mind. And I think he realized that's not going to happen, you know, so they have to develop, and you need to support them. And his parents kind of, you got to nudge them a little, right? You can't nudge them. And again, I don't know your story, and I don't know a lot of people's story. And I'm sure it happens. I suspect some kids don't react to this as well as probably you and my kids did. And I mean, I'm sure some.
I had to fight my
horror stories, quite frankly.
I had to fight my mother because my mother didn't want me to get a job when I was a teenager
Because of you.
She was so afraid I was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You know.
When did your eyesight progress the most rapid?
Well, I don't recall ever seeing stars.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Thomas Robert.
Yeah, and then
I have a feeling no one in the group has.
Yeah,
you had any?
Yeah, no, there are some that still can see stars. No, I think my first.
What's that button? I'm calling the BS button.
Yeah, I think that my first, the first time that it really kind of CHM kind of reared up and smacked me in the head was probably I was about 20 years old, and I was playing volleyball in a pretty high level league. And my job was a setter because I have no vertical leap and I'm not tall. So therefore, my job was to set the guys that could jump and the guys that were tall. And so, of course, I'm sure you've watched like Olympic or college volleyball where the setter is coming out of the back row.
Yep.
Well, I had to do that. So I had to run towards the net while the ball is going over my head, then turn and try to pick up the ball. And so what happened when I was about 20, I started losing the ball.
Yeah.
Where I couldn't get, the ball would come over fast and I turned my head and it was already up in the air. And then I'm, trying to find it. And I got to a point I was losing my team 3 to 5 points per game.
Yeah.
And at that's when I walked away. So that was the first time I think CHM really kicked me,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't wish I do wish I had this. I mean, I wish I had it, not the kids, but they, so I don't know what those moments were in my kid's life. But I'm sure there have been moments. I know that.
Yeah, you get them. Get them, I mean,
but I said, I do think that my kids so far, another thing too, you have to guide, you have to watch them. You have to watch your children's psyche a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's some for all these good stories I'm talking about my kids, I'm sure there's some pretty bad ones. All of a sudden you tell your kid he's going to lose his eyesight. They may not all react like Thomas and Robert, is what I'm saying. Or my kid.
Yeah. And my family was kind of, in my generational level, there's not a lot of us.
Yeah.
But on my mom's generational level, my grandmother had one brother and 4 carrier sisters. Because my great grandfather was a CHMer. He had 5 daughters, including my grandmother. So my mother grew up with a whole bunch of first cousins.
Yeah.
That were, bouncing off of everything. And I remember as a kid, yes, and I knew by this point that I had choroideremia. This was my fate, and I was very lucky in that I got to interact with these cousins who were, 20 to 30 years older than I.
Yeah.
And I got to see, we never sat down and talked about these things, but I got to watch them, and I watched how they lived their lives.
Yeah.
And I had, one cousin that was a teacher. I had another cousin that worked, I still think it's hilarious, worked security in a department store.
Yeah, that would seem like an interesting job.
Yeah. And his comment about it was, how bad are these shoplifters when a blind guy can catch them? But I got to grow up with, in my family, it wasn't, some families, all the guys go bald.
Yeah.
In my family, they were
Actually, I don't know that.
well, you don't know that, yeah. But it's in my family, all the guys are going blind.
Yeah.
And it wasn't thought of as anything more than that. It's just, you're in this family, pretty much that's going to be part of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was never hidden away. It was never not talked about. It was never, oh, you can't mention this. No, everybody.
And did they know? How many? They all thought they had RP, right? Most of them.
Actually, no. What happened with my great grandfather was never diagnosed with anything, but he was blind, fully blind when he passed. That was in 1964. And then in the late 60s, my cousin Bobby, he was 22 years older than I, he was in the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
So he was actually in the military. He started having issues with the glare coming off of the water.
Yeah.
During the sunlight. And so they sent him for testing, and he got diagnosed with RP.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they drummed him out of the service. They sent him to Boston, where he went and saw the Dr. Burson, and who looked at him and said, no, you don't have RP. You have this other disease called choroideremia.
And good luck. Here are your sunglasses.
Yeah. And then everybody in my family got called in at that point. And that's why I got diagnosed at such a young age, even though I wasn't symptomatic at 4.
My dear friend from law school, who's a very successful lawyer, very specialized, but we were in law school together. This sounds horrible that we did this, but we were young guys. He used to you could tell he didn't see, he just had bad eyesight, right? So we'd call him Mr. Magoo, right? He didn't tell us there was anything major wrong with him. He kind of played into it that he's a dope, he's just clumsy, he had bad eyesight. And he never told us, he was do everything with us. We'd have a blast. He was a nutcase. Mm-hmm. But he had told me that, I'm well, he went to the Maritime Academy, and I'm so now you're in law school. And he was a couple years older, like I was, didn't go right from college. And he said, yeah, I was in the Merchant Marines, and he was on watch and realized something's screwed up here. I can't see what I'm supposed to be seeing here in the distance at night on night watch lights. Mm-hmm. And that's when he discovered that he had, retina pigmentosis. But back in the day, he just said he had something he couldn't see that well at night. Yeah. Instead of saying I have RP, I would have looked it up, even though I didn't have the internet, and probably not gone and made he made fun of himself, though. I mean, he called himself Mr. Magoo. So it wasn't don't think people out there that
that's me too,
Yeah, it's so yeah, and he would and I knew one day he turned, we're at the corner, we're in the law school, we used to work the security area. There's a great gig we had as students, would work with security and basically study and goof around. But he went and he turned to make a move, kidding around, and there was a corner pillar. Poof, hit his head. Oh. That's when he and I started to have a conversation about this. Are you just a klutz, or is there an issue here? Mm-hmm. But now he has a full-time, literally, people are paralegals. He has a personal legal assistant who's basically with him from the time he gets up into his car to the office and go to court and all this other stuff. He specializes in actually working with parental rights, actually with DCF and stuff like that, Department of Family Services, and kind of those fights. But he's become a leading expert on it. You can go on YouTube channel. I'll actually send you a link for him because it's interesting to see.
Yeah, that is neat. So I have how do you feel about personally how the research is going and the work the CRF is doing at this point?
Well, I think that it's been great in terms we've been on the cutting edge. I mean, on the front line, we're there, we're involved, we do fun things. I wish we had more money to do that with, serious money. I've been very frustrated, quite frankly. It's not with us. The research. I mean, the research, we keep we are on this roller coaster, which has this very gradual incline, and then we seem to get these to the bottom, and now whether it's to the bottom or not, at least that's the perception. I mean, you hear this, and then you find out especially when Robert's been in one of the studies, the trials rather, and that it's not working. That's basically not working. And so, although they haven't noticed it in him, they haven't had enough change in his good eye, and I mean in his bad eye.
Mm-hmm.
So he hasn't really been a number that's probably showing that it isn't working, but I'm believing that I guess it doesn't. I don't know. But again, we lose traction, like all of a sudden, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. This is going to change the world, blah, 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 blah. And then you start to get a trickle out that things aren't looking so good, and we go silent. We don't publicize the bad stuff enough. I hate to say that. We need to let people know. I think far less people in our group know about the failures or the frustrations, and still are hoping against hope that it's working. I don't think we do a great job at telling our membership when things aren't good.
Yeah.
I understand that's a tough thing to do, but I think if we polled the membership on where these trials were, I think a lot more would not. I think there's a lot that would be like, oh, what do you mean it's not going well? Like, what didn't work? Or what's like, oh, there are issues? They're having issues? I'm telling you this, most of the people don't know. So, and I think, and it's a natural thing that we all get very excited about every little breakthrough. But I still think that.
Well, in my mind, even a negative is a positive, because you're still, whether or not it works, and I'm coming up on 4 years post-treatment, and I'm still stable. So maybe I'm one of the ones that it did work with. But throwing that aside, even if it didn't work completely, we've funded other projects that didn't work either in the years. But that negative knowledge is also good, because now we know, okay, that's not a path.
That's great. Yeah, but that's not, doesn't necessarily make.
Unfortunately, that's what research is. I mean, there's, you're going to get a lot more misses than hits.
I'd much rather know that something was working and my kids could both get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel confident that we are going to get there.
And then we get lost in the, all of a sudden when on this last one with Roush backing out.
Mm-hmm.
With I'm losing my
4DMT.
4D. To have a major drug manufacturer who, as I got to know the people, right? They took me out to dinner in Boston. They were all excited that this is the way, this is what we think this is the way it's going to happen. If there's going to be treatment, it's going to be this way of doing it. And then to find out they totally withdrew, I know why. We talk about it. We try to rationalize why they did it. It may be exactly why they did it. They may be wrong to have done it. It may continue, but I don't think 80% of our people understand that this happened. Now, does it help them to know? I don't know, but I don't think we are very quick to put out the good news. But I think sometimes I just think that's always good to do, is to have everything out there. And again, 4D is not in the tank. They claim to think they can still do it, right?
They haven't stopped. They're still going.
And from my understanding is that the initial risks and some things didn't quite match up to what Roush's expectations were.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. And it's just.
See, I think there's more to it than the fact they realize they can't make any money on it. I'm always convinced
that could be that too. Yeah.
That's going to be a real problem for us. We could find, you could find a cure tomorrow. And how do you get someone to invest in something that?
And that's, and that's, and when you think about it, going back 22 years, that's the reason why it was 3 patients that formed a CRF.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't, and nobody cared.
Yeah.
we cared. Our friends.
I'm surprised thinking about those three people. What, were you one of them?
Yeah.
And then
Me, John Oster, and Bobby, my cousin Bobby.
and then when did the group get together? When did they start? Jason, when did Jason get in?
Jason started the first email support group, which is how we met. Bobby and I met John, and it was in a email
I'm
conversation.
thinking between Jason, Oster, and you, I'm surprised anyone else joined.
Exactly, and Eric. Don't forget Eric too. That's another one that.
Oh God, that's enough to make a party not crowded.
So anyway, but yeah, it was just started out. It was an idea in an email in the old the original email group, and then that's what started the whole ball rolling. But yeah, Jason was on the planning committee. We had a small committee of 8 people that kind of sat down and figured out how we wanted to frame this whole organization. And then we had our initial board of directors, which I still have the listing of our initial board of directors on file.
Now, the interesting thing about that, people don't realize how things have changed in terms of the world and communication.
Oh yeah.
Even though that you named Jason and that connection you guys had, that I think when we were in California for the conference was the first time you met him, right?
Yep. First time we'd met face to face.
So you had been in contact in a group for how many years, and then you finally met face to face. When I was there, I was actually there.
At that point, it was about, because Jason and I met, quote unquote, met via email. He started that email group in '96, and I was I think, 3rd or 4th person to find it and subscribe to the email group.
And we met when we were in California, 2007, 2000?
Yeah, 2008.
So it was 12 years after this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I got to see you guys meet. And Eric,
well, it's like there's a CHMer in New Zealand who was part of that original email group and has been a member since we formed. And his name's Fraser, great guy. We're talking 25, 26 years I've known this guy by email and phone call.
Well, do you Zoom with him now so you can see him?
Well, it wouldn't help on his end, but we haven't Zoomed yet, but yeah, I should get a hold of him.
Is he completely lost his sight?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think he has a little bit of light perception, but he's in his 60s. Okay. But yeah, but the key is, like I said, I've known him all these years. We have never met face to face.
Wow.
So.
And if you did Zoom, it would be guarantee the only time in his life that he'd say, well, maybe losing my sight wasn't the worst thing.
Yeah, this is true.
I made it my whole life without meeting him. Now that's sad though, when you think about it. You think about how our technology is, it's increased, but again, we need to expand. But the research, I love the group. I think we need to get, I don't know. We need to make some changes. We need to get bigger. We need to stop thinking we think small, and I think we need to stop thinking small. We need to take more risks, and we need to make the organization a little sexier, for lack of better expression. And I think that we tend to have, I love all you guys and I love everyone, but we think about things, and I guess the analogy is not untrue. We are narrow in our focus, and that is not to be a play on words, but we need to just, I think, strip away, and bring in people, and just, we always focus in on education, which is great. Finding our members, very important, especially in terms of genetic testing and stuff like that. But I just think we need to get more powerful, bigger, utilize some real fundraising techniques that are out there.
Yeah. But everything goes hand in hand. I mean, that's where it comes down to, like, raising the awareness among the medical community, then brings in more patients who you can then support and inform, who then become fundraisers
Yeah.
and to have their networks. So it's like everything is, it's all tied together. You have to, you know, that's why I've said for many, many years that support and information is one of our cornerstones, and it has to be.
Yeah.
Because without it, you know, over 90% of the money that the foundation raises comes from people with CHM, their family members, and their friends.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
I think we need to start finding ways to get corporate sponsors and things like that. We need
and those help, and we do get those. You know, we have Kathy has done a great work with that in increasing corporate sponsorship. Matter of fact, these videos that we do, you know, all of our Zoom stuff that we do is all funded by sponsors that she lined up. So, you know, we're heading in that direction, Tom.
but a nice, and I'm making this up because I don't know if there is such a foundation, but a nice $4 million check from the Hershey Foundation might be.
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, you know, but at the same time, I also think about the fact of I remember celebrating that first year that we raised $10,000.
Yeah.
You know, and now we raise, well, prior to COVID hitting, which hit a lot of charities, unfortunately, you know, but we were up to, you know, raising $500,000 a year, and now we're building up towards that again.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have the advantage of having that long view of, you know, remembering our first ever check that we sent for research, which was $1,500.
Yeah.
And that accounted for 2/3 of what we had in the bank at that time, you know. And then, so if you want to talk humble beginnings, you know, yes, I agree in that. Yeah, we do need to continue to grow. We do need to continue to push and push hard. But at the same time, we've come a very long way, very, very long way in a relatively short time.
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess it all depends on the perspective, but you know.
And for you people watching at home, you should know that Cory still has his baptism money.
You have already dispensed a lot of advice to parents, and I thank you for that.
Well, then I think
have any last words that you'd like to pass on to other parents that are going to be watching this, that have smaller children?
I try to be tough about it, right? So I'm kind of like a big old Irish mug here in Boston, right? So, but I always try to be, you know, but I'm an emotional guy. And so I'll tell parents out there that if everyone knew in my life, or even who were close to me, knew how many times I cry, I do, you know. And so I can't talk, like I can talk to you about it, Cory, and now there's this magical land out there that they're not really face to face. But if I talk about like what's going on with my kids to someone face to face, like a group, like, you know, what's going on, how is, you know, blah blah blah, and I'll start to talk, and then I'll try to explain to them like choroideremia, like they don't know it, like for the first time, I get choked up. I start to almost cry, and it's like it's really hard for me. People know it. I think like people that are around me a lot, like at work, like they know, like I'll just like I have a hard time getting through it. And part of that is really I feel horrible about it, right? Because I'm not supposed to cry, because crying makes it sound like I'm not happy. You know, it's like, I mean, I'm not happy but about it, talking about it, but it's like I don't want them to think that they make me cry, you know, they're conditioned. But as a parent, you know, I'm not going to be here at some point, right? The way the world works, they're going to spend a decent amount of their life without me, hopefully, just by the math. And that scares the hell out of me. I mean, I trust they'll be fine, and I trust them as kids and growing up, but, you know, I'd just like to be able to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And but I won't be. So I think you do, as parents, you gotta do it. Just don't be afraid to cry. Don't be afraid to get help. Don't be afraid. Try to live as normal as you can, but realize it's not normal. Okay, so we talk about, moving forward, do this, encourage them to do that. You do this, and how do you support them? And da 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 da, and everything's great. Well, no, it's not normal. Okay, it's not normal. What you're living is a life, because there's a normal baseline. Not everyone's normal. They always say, no one's normal. Everyone has issues. Everyone has, yeah. Well, yeah, everyone has issues, but we have issues where our kids are going blind. Big issue. Okay, big issue. As a parent, I like to compartmentalize it a little bit too. And this is horrible to think about, but when you see parents have to deal with horrifically handicapped children with major, major medical problems, right? That their children, they're born in this world, are never going to be able to get on, whether it be, severe, mental issues or physical issues that are just devastating, right? I hate to say this, but I kind of look to them for inspiration. And it isn't inspiration so much as I can't believe how they do it, which I can't. But it does put into perspective that, Jesus, my kids are only losing their eyesight, right? So the magnitude of a kid losing your eyesight is overwhelming to a parent, right? But there's a lot of parents in the world that would say, I wish my kid was only losing their eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you start, that's how I get out of this. And it's like, not like pity. Like, I was just getting emotional there a few minutes ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could tell I have a hard time talking about it. But once I changed to that subject of, hey, there are worse things in the world, right?
Absolutely.
That's the attitude I want my kids to have. That's it. That's the attitude that helps me get out of the hole a little bit. And, and be aware, people, that when you're seeing this, look at your expansive world. It'll be your friends of your friends, people who know people. You're going to find some really, really, really difficult things that the parents have with their children.
It's like that old saying, I cried that I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet.
That's exactly right. I mean, I look at this. I have friends, people I know, whose kids were drug addicts and died. I know that's just not that unusual. They overdosed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? They would gladly have had their kid losing his eyesight and not having overdosed, right? So
Yes.
There's extremes there, so, but those extremes, you gotta look at them and say, okay, what can't my kids do? Well, as you know, and I can see you, and you know me, and I know you, and I can tell what, I can make a list of the 30 things you can't do. All right, that's pretty obvious. But and once, I think kids, you have to have them, like we started the conversation off about things and how what you try to do to support your kids. Yeah, they got to be realistic, right? Like, you guys are all realistic. You know what you can't do. But that's still not too bad compared to, like, not being here, right? So
Exactly.
overdosing, or it's better than not having.
As I tell people, I say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I can't do. But you know something? I focus on what I can do.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not changing that unless we get a miracle tomorrow.
Yeah. And heck, you've been exposed to the CHM family long enough, and you've seen it. You've seen that there are people, that business owners and accountants, and there's so many different teachers. There are, heck, I studied martial arts and I'm blind. So what? And you look at, an Eric and his artwork, and there's so many different examples of people who have this that have said, and it's not that and this is where the fine line is. And I tried to explain it to somebody once. I don't do this in spite of choroideremia. I do it because it's something that I want to do, that I like to do, and I'm going to find a way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you got to encourage people like, if you can encourage those who have it to plug along, to find their way. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's got to be brutal, but you can't let it define you. Is that the expression?
Yeah. And it becomes a lifetime of, there are certain things that come up in your life where, okay, something bad happens, boom, and you adjust to that, and then you move on with your life. Okay. When it comes to CHM, what I've noticed, given my more advanced years now, is you don't adjust once. You adjust multiple times.
Yeah.
Because it continues to, just when you think you've got this, I'm all set, and then something else happens and you have to adjust again, so you have to learn to be very flexible and know that these changes are going to come, and that it's going to be okay, that you're going to be fine with it. You'll be able to adjust, and you'll be able to press on.
Well, that's good. I guess that's a good way to, although, it's a good way to end it, I guess, but I guess again, and again, to the people watching this, I hope you feel free that, after you get over the fact that I'm going to tell you something really odd that you're not going to believe at this point, that I'm actually older than Cory. I know it's a remarkable thing to see this on video. The parents should know that, dial a joke. They can call me anytime. No, that you can always reach out to me, right? So, and when I say me, I really mean us. I think that if you're watching this, and I don't know how you're getting a hold of this, and maybe you just randomly found it, somehow you did a search, or you're just hearing about us as an organization, is that, I don't know of anyone in the organization that won't pick up the phone and answer it, so if you're a dad or a mom, or and I know I speak for my kids and my wife, you can get a hold of the Driscoll family, and we'll be there, and we'll try to tell you what we know, tell you what we think. I mean, we're there, and I think that people need to use that. I know my boys are very willing to, they're very open about it, and they would, talk to anybody. If you're having trouble with a kid, you just want them to meet them. I think they're pretty, in my world, they're pretty inspirational. I mean, I think that they have their act together in terms of their understanding and their accomplishments. But, so I think that that's one thing we as a group offer. I don't know if everyone takes advantage of it as much as they should. We can't set up a 24-hour helpline, but I think the organization and those within it, for the most part, I think will help anybody. I notice all you need to do is, when you start announcing there's a new member on Facebook, right? When you'll put it out there, and you see the comments, hey, welcome, hey, call me, whatever.
Family helps family. It's as simple as that.
Well, it is a family.
It
is a family, and it just is. So it's like, we're there for you. I don't know all the answers, and it's not easy, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, there's a million things we want over here. And it's kind of put them all into and to Randy, by the way, if I had a drink, to one of the dads, Randy Wheeler, who we lost, and I think that we'll never replace.
Gosh, no. Yeah,
he was damn, I couldn't stand a lot about him. He was a thing, and I think that's one thing that you'll find in our family here, that Randy and I, but for Choroideremia, I guarantee you never would have talked. We had zero in common. Zero. It was north and south in more ways than one.
Yankees and Red Sox, literally.
Red Sox, Republican, Democrat, this, Southern. We would never have spoken, nor would I have ever wanted to speak with him. I would have no interest in ever meeting that man, and yet we were very close because of Choroideremia.
The great equalizer.
It was a great equalizer, and it made everything else, made all our differences, we could kind of we'd talk about them, but we could almost laugh about them because we're kind of centrally focused on our sons, but
Mhm.
uh,
Absolutely.
you know.
I know how I know exactly
So
what you mean.
I went, sadly, I went down to his services in Tennessee. I remember getting out of the car with Eric and saying, just looking around going, boy, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Looking around and then hearing all these people just talking like Randy was beyond me. But it was, he was such a good guy. I mean, there's a lot of great guys in this group. So hopefully onward to Rochester.
That's right. Coming
I'm
up.
trying is there a golf course at that thing?
There is.
Yeah. I'm
There
trying
is.
to get Thomas and Robert excited about going to Rochester. You don't realize the heat I'm getting for this.
Well, we're trying to organize the first nighttime golf cart racing for CHM.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, they're so far we've been meeting a little resistance from the country club on letting us borrow their golf carts in the evening.
Yeah. You
I
could
don't
do
know.
you could do night golfing because that would be an equalizer, right?
Certainly would be,
Yeah.
except that I might kill somebody when I hit the ball because I tend to hit it sideways, I guess. So, all right. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Tom. I really
Welcome.
appreciated the sit down.
You're
And
welcome.
I think a lot of people are going to enjoy seeing this.
Now, who edits this?
Todd Purvis, who's a fellow CHMer, who works as and again, talking about, okay, here's a career. Todd works as a video editor in Hollywood. He actually edits like for various TV shows and things like that. He does video editing. And he's a CHMer.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. See ya. I'll
Anyway,
talk to
well,
you later.
thank you again.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All righty. You take care of yourself.